Welcome to IT Chronicles 10 and Tech. My name is Carlos Casanova. I'm here with Shane Carlson
Hello.
and Kathleen Wilson. Hey, Kathleen.
Hello.
And today's guest is Ryan Ogilvie. Welcome, Ryan.
Thank you for having me today.
So, Ryan, I understand obviously we're in the service management space. All of us have been kind of working in the space for a while. We've been discussing, the aspects of, sort of positive business outcomes and the association with, why we drive, IT service manager from a business perspective. So why don't you tell us a little bit about some of the things that you guys are doing out there and, some of your background and, and how that business perspective really is driving service management principles.
Okay. So I'm currently with an organization called Interpipeline. There to help them with their service management processes and how they interact with their business. And one of the things that I've seen in this organization as well with lots of other organizations is they're always looking at it from an IT perspective. And I think we've all kind of seen this challenge before is we're always looking at things from IT, always IT. And in the end, it's really about people and integrating with business. That's what we're really here to do. And I think that one of the things when I talked with this organization when I came here, they said, we're not delivering on services. We're not doing these things. We're not doing those things. Well, how are you communicating with your business? And they kind of, like what? Like we're supposed to do what? Like, no, we work in IT. And I said, the fundamental thing that we're missing here is that people piece. Like the process, the technology part, I think we're getting a better handle on, but it's the people piece.
Right. So I mean, again, like I said, a lot of us have been talking around this space for a while. Is there something unique in sort of in your organization? Because I know with a lot of my clients, forming that business case is really where it gets difficult, or it's difficult, but at the same time, it's the most vital piece of getting these initiatives to fruition and to really get the value out of them. So tell us a little bit about some of them that you've worked with.
Right. So one of the first things that we looked at this organization was to identify what that value really was, and when we looked at it kind of holistically and kind of piecemealed it out a bit, I said, what are we doing as an organization, like delivering service from an IT perspective, in building those relationships, our fundamental communication with those business units, and kind of how are we measuring those things? And they said, well, yeah, but we have ticketing systems and we have these and we have that. Let's spoil it right back. I mean, we don't really need to overcomplicate this. I think the problem is, and people in IT will understand this, they're always trying to get it perfect all the time. And I think when we look at it, we're like, well, we're not quite there, let's not deliver. Like, we're not quite there, let's not do. But if we were to kind of just start those discussions going and building relationships with those business units, more often than not, they kind of help us. They help extract that value. They're like, well, I'm a trusted partner with the people in IT. I went for coffee with them. I have lunch with them. I know who they are and what they do. I think when we kind of boil it back in simple terms, we start to kind of drive out what that value will look like and what's valuable to those business units without overcomplicating.
So, Ryan, I have a question for you. So, how do IT pros or people who work in service management, derive or understand or even document what business value? Tell me about the journey you would take me through, as I'm a server administrator, and how would I understand what I do in my daily job and what how it aligns to business value?
Sure. So I think what we did here at this organization was the first, and that was one of the first questions that came out. The infrastructure and operations manager said, well, the lights are on, everybody's happy, I think. I don't know, though. And so we started to look back at, what the business was really doing. And one of the first things the business unit said was, well, IT's kind of a black hole. We don't know what's going in, what comes out. We don't really think they understand the business. And in many cases, when we kind of went back to the IT departments, the infrastructure manager and the server, network admins, and those kind of folks, was they're like, well, we don't really understand what our business does either. And we've been here for 2, 3, 10 years. Like we know that they're a pipeline company, but we don't really understand fundamentally what makes that pipeline company more successful or less successful, and what those things that we do to provide that value. So part of that journey was to map what the business was really needed. So we went to a specific business unit to start with, one of our transportation departments that delivers bitumen through all of our pipelines. We asked them, what makes you successful? What parts of technology make you successful? They said, here's the 3 things that would be really great if we could improve upon those things. So we took those back to our application sustainment and our infrastructure group. And here's what our business is telling us to make them more successful. And as we started to move the needle in those directions and worked on communicating that we were doing that, the business immediately saw value in doing that. Now, whether it was quantifiable on paper to say, we've upticked our value like 10%, that was still something hard for IT to get around. Like there was really nothing quantifying that at the beginning, and everyone's looking for that, how do we measure this versus uptime and those kinds of the measurements. But it's more of a, how does the business feel and kind of getting that part rolling first before we get to the fine tuning.
Yeah, excellent. So did you find it was difficult to get some of the folks in the IT organization to kind of understand the line of sight between the daily activities that they're doing and how that ties to the business outcomes and business success? And what were some of the challenges in getting there?
It was absolutely difficult because it's way out of people's wheelhouses, and we found that the people that were easier to do it, and I'm not trying to kind of specify like target areas or people or groups, but we found that those people that were fresh out of school or millennials seem to have a better handle on how this worked versus people that had been maybe in the infrastructure space for 10, 15, 20 years. From them it was like, yeah, I got my 5 nines. This is what the business wants.
Yeah. And it's okay, you can call out the network guys and the Unix administrators. We all know who they are.
That is exactly it. So, funny you should mention, right? We had even within IT, they say, well, I think we're good for this, but those are the Unix guys. I don't think they're going to get around this. And so we said, okay, well, maybe there's a disconnect. To kind of further boil this backwards, there's a disconnect between areas within IT. They're like, well, we're not really that siloed. I'm like, but it sounds like you might be. So how do we deliver to our business when we've already got internal silos that we're facing with here? Very much so between application sustainment and infrastructure and operations. They have their own kind of silos and challenges. So we said, aside from working with our business, let's start working on communicating with ourselves and get comfortable doing that. And once we got a good group of that communication and discussion and what are you guys doing to help us deliver value and vice versa, we were able to kind of get on kind of a common ground so that we could have those discussions with business units.
Yeah, definitely a classic struggle in IT. It's very difficult in some cases to get IT folks and infrastructure folks to understand and speak in the language of the business. But it sounds like you're doing yeoman's work there, trying to make that happen. So, Ryan, thank you very much for joining us today. I really appreciate the dialogue. Carlos, Kathleen, thank you guys as well for being the wonderful co-hosts that you always are. And Ryan, hope to see you out there in social media and in the industry.
Well, thank you very much for having me this afternoon.
Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.